I'm a big fan of stoneware clay, and the type I am using here is a great blend for creating utilitarian pottery and ceramics. Coming from the Standard Clay Company out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, this clay is known as Standard 153. It produces a soft warm beige in oxidation and a rich gray-brown in reduction. It responds well to a variety of techniques and is excellent for production potters and classroom use. It is perfect for this angular, multifaceted caricature study as it is a very versatile clay. Preparing the clay is a vital aspect of all water-based clay and ceramic production, especially when the piece will be fired in a kiln. Wedging the clay is typically the first thing you should do before you begin. This is done to remove any air bubbles and ensure a smooth and pliable blend. However, the clay I am currently using is quite old and very hard, almost impossible to wedge, so I will be trusting the production company that made it. And out of the thousands of pounds of clay that I have used in the past, it's pretty safe to say that this is air pocket free. So using the floor and gravity, I stretch and shape the cube of clay into an elongated rectangle. Once I am happy with the overall shape, I begin to cut away the clay that is not needed, using a wire clay cutoff or cutting wire to remove big chunks. And then I start digging away with a double-ended modeling tool. Like Michelangelo, who famously said, "I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free." For me, it's about removing everything that isn't essential to reveal certain aspects of the sculpture. Here I am adding additional clay to exaggerate the nose and mouth. Since the clay is not very fresh, it is important that I thoroughly score the surface with a fine point needle tool, making sure that the score lines are deep enough to receive the slip, which will soften the harder clay, allowing additional clay to join together. Think of slip as a glue, which is used to join or weld pieces of clay. It is basically watery clay, which can be made by crushing bone-dry clay into a powder and mixing it well with water. Slip enables the particles of clay from each surface to interlace with one another, kind of like shuffling a deck of cards. Some add vinegar to their slip and claim that it helps to improve the stickiness of the clay, but that really depends on the type of clay being used. I mostly use the vinegar to keep the odor or potentially moldy smell to a minimum. I'll be using a wide range of tools: wire loop tools for carving, rib tools for smoothing, sculpting knives for precision, sponges for blending, a banding wheel, and many more. If you want to see all the tools I used for this project, stick around till the end to see them laid out on the work table. This sculpture is inspired by the idea of capturing a caricature through geometric shapes, so I focus on clean, faceted planes rather than smooth curves. Each cut removes clay to reveal the structure beneath, almost like chiseling stone. As I refine the details and bring out the expression, I constantly make adjustments to the features using a small loop tool and a homemade flat blade tool, which was made by using the banding straps from shipping boxes. I am focused on creating a piercing, intense look based on the previous caricature drawing I did for the past Caricature Resolution Challenge. For the mouth, I carve sharp, angular lips and add texture using a wooden sculpting knife, dull pencils, and wire brushes. I try to use multiple angles and facets of each feature to create movement. This helps to set the tone for the facial structure, keeping it asymmetrical to hint at the expressive nature of creating a multifaceted caricature portrait. Here I use a wire bristle brush to add texture to the hair and prepare it for a colored slip. I then use a dry paintbrush to remove the tiny bits of residual clay left over from the wire brushing. Using a rubber rib tool and a rubber or silicone tip blending tool, I smooth out rough areas. Here I use a sponge to smooth transitions where needed, but I keep the angular edges crisp to maintain a geometric style. Water helps blend areas, but I'm careful not to over-wet the clay, as this can remove a thin layer of clay, exposing the larger particles of grog, making the skin appear more rough and textured, which of course could be intentional if you are trying to get a rougher surface. The only time I share information like this in this video is when I'm receiving monetary compensation as an educator or instructor in a large group setting or in private lessons. Which brings me to the value for value system. If you find this video educational and learn something from watching it, use the links below to make a donation. Click on the affiliate links to make a purchase, or use one of the many options that YouTube provides, like the super thanks. Don't forget to also hit that like button and subscribe. Now I am rejuvenating a pre-stained slip. This is a clay slip that has black mason stain added to it. I use a piece of copy paper, a rolling pin, and a metal blade to crush the bone-dry clay into a powder, before adding it into a lidded jar where I add just enough water and vinegar to make it a perfect slurry for brushing onto the previously prepared hair. Sometimes it is best to allow the slip to sit overnight to ensure that the water has absorbed well. Some ceramic artists actually use a blender to guarantee smoothness, especially when slip casting. Working back and forth from smoothing out areas to adding subtle scratches or ridges, my goal is to mimic skin or hair, giving the bust that lifelike yet abstract feel. Here I use a sharp wooden knife to add depth to the eyebrows, mustache, and beard before adding the freshly made black slip with a standard paintbrush. I also use a standard paintbrush and water to help smooth other harder-to-reach areas as needed. When using a brush and water, a thin buildup of slip can accumulate in the brush, resulting in a slightly smoother finish. After I am satisfied with the sculpt, it is now time to hollow it out. This is a crucial step as it reduces the risk of cracking or exploding during the firing process. It reduces the drying time, eliminates trapped air pockets or bubbles, and reduces the overall weight of the sculpture. Here I am using a wire cutoff to remove the top part of the head in line with the hairline, in order to perform brain surgery. No, it just feels like brain surgery because this can be a nerve-wracking part of the process, as one does not want to ruin all that previous work. Using a basic double-ended loop trim tool, I scoop out as much of the clay as I can, leaving the walls of the sculpture thick enough to maintain stability, but yet thin enough to ensure an adequate and even drying. Just like making a simple pinch pot, I feel the thickness between my fingers to gauge how much more or less I need to remove. And this is when that X-ray vision comes in handy. It can also be helpful to use the tool as a measuring device to gauge thickness or depth, assuming you don't have a ruler or tape measure laying around. Since I will be reattaching the top part of the head, it is important to not create a sealed air pocket, as it will explode in the kiln. To prevent this from happening, I use a brass hole cutter or a straw to create vent holes in the ears, nose, or eyes. The current condition of the clay is slightly harder than leather hard, so it is very important that I thoroughly score the surfaces to be welded for reattachment, using a fine point needle tool. It is also important to use a significant amount of well-mixed slip. This becomes the glue that helps to bond the two pieces together. I firmly attach the pieces together with significant pressure to force a good connection between multiple slip-filled scratches. I like to think of them as stacks of frisbees, or as I said before, shuffling playing cards. Here I use a rubber or silicone clay sculpting tool to quickly clean up excess slip, before covering it with plastic and allowing it to rest for about an hour before I continue with the next step.
A few hours later.
After a few hours have passed, I return to the sculpture confident that the top part of the head is securely attached to the other, and begin the cleanup process to restore the original elements, textures, and features of the sculpture that may have been damaged by the hollowing out process. I fix the hair, add more slip, and using a wet brush and sponge I clean up the mess. Now for the lower half, the original source photo of the celebrity influence depicts him wearing a leather jacket. So since this is a caricature abstraction, I violate the rules just a bit by sculpting the jacket with a different, less angular, non-geometric technique, focused more on realism and less of the abstraction. With the lower half now complete, I take some photos and videos with different backgrounds before hollowing it out. That way, if it gets damaged from the next step, at least I have some progress documentation. I will use the same technique as before and start at the bottom and work my way up carefully through the neck until I reach the hollow part of the head. I carefully cut the bust from the banding wheel and lay it on a soft towel with a plastic bag in between, as I do not want the texture of the towel to transfer to the clay surfaces. I then use scrap clay to wedge into certain areas to maintain some stability before cutting into the clay. Slowly and very carefully, I scoop the clay piece by piece, being careful not to break on through to the other side. Yes, I like the doors. Now to finalize the sculpture, I use my maker's mark and a 6-digit automated running number machine stamp. This generated number is used as an individual serial number for all of my one-of-a-kind sculptures for authentication. I sign it and then leave it to dry. To ensure that the sculpture dries evenly, I place it on wooden strips to allow air to flow up into the hollowed out areas.
Now at this point, the sculpture is completed, and what I'll do is leave it on the shelf until it becomes bone dry, so that I can fire it in the kiln. Again, it's extremely important to allow it to dry thoroughly before firing it to be able to reduce the risk of it potentially exploding or cracking. If you found this video educational, you learned something, and it was worth something to you, use the link below to provide a donation to help support this channel so that I'll make more videos. You could also use the many options that YouTube provides to be able to show your support. Thanks again for watching. This is Brendan from Artismia. Keep practicing, and we'll catch you next time.